Hey y'all, this is Nikki of Soul Things Botanica, and you are listening to the How to Be Magical podcast, where we talk with practitioners from all over the diaspora for season 2, and just talk about, you know, how they do their things, how they keep it magical. And this week I have a special guest, very, very special guest to me. We are here in East New York, in the home of the lovely John Michael Corrales, aka Yerba Buena, aka El Brujo Calao, aka Grand High Bitch. Okay, we got a lot of names. People got a lot of names. But I came into this man's orb, energy field. Somehow it was the ancestors. They put it together. I can't even take no credit for this. I feel like I harassed him on Facebook enough times and and forced myself in his life, like, be my friend. And now we have a lovely spiritual relationship.
No, you can't get rid of it.
I can't. Well, I'm done. I'm stuck. You stuck with me. You stuck with me. Okay? You stuck with me. All right? So, but this episode, I wanted to talk about, we're going to have another conversation about Espiritismo. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke with Elio of the Boogie Down All-Stars, historian, culturalist, all that jazz. And we talked a bit about Espiritismo, but I feel like this is a very good follow-up episode because we got a OG Espiritista here. Nah, OG, for real. We're talking about, we got 17 years of Ocha, we got almost 20 years of Palo, we got even more of just dealing with dead folks, and that is dealing with dead people.
That's my life.
Yes. So, tell me a little bit about yourself, just a touch.
All right, so yes, my name is John Michael. That's my given name. Obviously, yeah, they call me Yerba Buena and all that other good stuff, the Grand High Bitch, ha 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 ha. But I am a Lukumi practitioner, as you mentioned. I initiated when I was 19 to Her Majesty, the wonderful Yemaya, and I have been an espiritista, or I have been, I think a better way of saying it is I have been working with spirits, muertos, that kind of stuff since I was about 14, 15 years old. So that obviously started first, as for many of us in the Lukumi tradition, it tends to. And, you know, what's destined to be is destined to be. So anything else that followed from that, like getting scratched and getting initiated into Ocha, it was, I guess, obviously always meant to be. But my foundation, which has even been corroborated by multiple litas of mine, is that the spirits, the muerto, is my entire existence. It is my foundation. It is my rock, my sword, my shield, my walking staff. Like, they are it for me. I come from a family of what you would say, like a family background of Espiritismo. My mother's mother. So, obviously on my maternal side, she was a very, very well-known espiritista in her day. Like one of those old school, her name was Adelina Casilla, but everybody called her Popiña.
Popiña. So
everybody would know in the neighborhood, be like, oh, go to Popiña. Oh, just go to Popiña. But we're talking about the times when espiritistas were unassuming. Like nowadays, everybody thinks that somebody's a good espiritista because they have fancy backgrounds, they have all of these crazy things on in their videos, and they live in a fabulous house. So the more you have in your home, the more rich you are, the better off you are financially. Nowadays, that's the gauge of how good somebody is as an espiritista. That means that you've ascended. Pardon my French, bullshit. My great-grandmother, may she rest in peace, was poor. And we're talking about, like, food stamps when they were the book of food stamps. Government cheese in the block, which, sidebar, is the best grilled cheese.
It is the best grilled cheese.
In your life.
That's the best grilled cheese.
But that's the level of poverty that it is what we're talking about. So we're talking about somebody that was not rich in money, but was rich in spirituality. Was rich in the givingness of what was the essence of her as an espiritista, like caridad, charity, which is one of the cornerstones of espiritismo as we know it as Puerto Ricans and Latin people of the Caribbean. Caridad, charity, is at the heart of what it is that we do. And she lived that. Like, she would never think of charging for a misa. She would never charge for any work that she did. if people left things on the altar, she would not say no. But she would never ask, she would never assume. But, you know, people find ways to show their gratitude. They would check for the family. They would, you know, if they had a business, the family would always get the hookup or get the discount. And it was evident in her passing. She passed when I was very, very young. So the memories that I have of her specifically are very few. But one of the most vivid memories I have of her, oddly enough, is the funeral. There were so many people.
Oh, wow. The whole neighborhood showed up.
The neighborhood. There were people from all over the city, people that had come from out of the country, that this woman had influenced to come and pay their final respects.
Wow.
There was not a place to put more flowers.
Wow.
Because of how many people came to give light and progress to her spirit on her last day of viewing. And it's so funny because I now work down the block from that funeral home, and when I go on my lunch break to smoke my cigarette, I stand by the funeral and I just think of her. And some people would think that it's morbid, but having the relationship that I have with the dead, it's not morbid. It actually brings a smile on my face to think that, you know, somebody that was so humble in her person, but also in the way that she lived her life,
yes,
was remembered so fondly and so profoundly by so many people. So she obviously raised all of my aunts and uncles, great aunts and uncles, in the practice of Espiritismo, basic knowledge and all of that stuff. We're talking about the times when people would have 6, 7, 8, 9 kids at a time. So my grandmother, my mother's mother, the oldest woman, who then gave birth to my mother, her oldest. So we're seeing a trend, the oldest women carrying the torch of spirituality. And my grandmother was a practitioner for many, many years. I've seen my grandmother mounted. We're talking about the kind of woman that you give her a glass of soda or a can of soda, because all she drinks is Pepsi, not even water, her cigarette, and in the course of normal conversation, she will read you for filth. And then, you know, as generations pass, you know, things, for lack of a better phrase, get watered down, or people connect less because of less necessity. We're talking about women, my grandmother and my great-grandmother, may they rest in peace. May she rest in peace, excuse me. My grandmother is very much alive. That didn't have a lot of education and came from a time where women still didn't have certain aspirations and weren't afforded certain things. Whereas my mother came in the generation where a woman could do it all. And she did. My mother went on to become an assistant principal. Later in life, mind you, I remember being a kid, being in college with my mother during her classes when she used to go to Brooklyn College. And she always kept certain aspects and certain traditions, I guess, that she was brought up learning, revolving around Espiritismo. But she's not what I would say would be a practitioner. Is she evident? Yes. Do I know when something's going on? Yeah, because my mother will have a certain kind of music on, and she'll have her skirt on, and she'll be cleaning the house. And back in the day, she used to have this spiritual bead of San Lazaro, Saint Lazarus, that I believe my great-grandmother had prepared for her. And when I saw her wearing that, I already knew what was up.
I was just about to ask if there was like any patron, like family spirits that y'all work with.
Yeah, so Santa Barbara is really, really big in my family overall. Santa Barbara is the patron saint of my grandmother.
Okay.
And was, I believe, one of the patron saints, the main patron saints of my great-grandmother. My mother's, obviously, I just mentioned, would be San Lazaro. On my father's side, we have a patron saint. I'm actually her custodian. She's the Monserrate.
Who's that?
She is featured sitting in a chair with a child on her left hand, and the child is holding a world.
Okay.
And what I love about her is that she's black. So the actual statue that I have, which is older than my father, and my father's 60-something years old, belonged to my great-grandfather, may he rest in peace. She's in her original color. She's been restored, but in the original color. So she was originally black, and just this huge presence, and so I inherited her, and she'll keep on going down. So we have Santa Barbara, and San Lazaro on one side, and then we have the Monserrate on the other side.
Ooh, so interesting.
Yes.
So Espiritismo is very personal, right? Like, it's very much about people's personal courts, their own personal spirits, like their own family spirits. It's not a one size fits all.
Not at all.
Kind of deal.
Not
it's
at all.
a ever flowing conversation between the living and the dead. You know, the people that have transitioned. What would you say is your like definition of Espiritismo?
So Espiritismo is a very big umbrella. We know that the word itself, Espiritismo, and to clarify, because this is one of my big pet peeves, there is spiritualism and people who are spiritualists, and there is Espiritismo. If we go by language, because language is a thing, it exists, the English translation of Espiritismo would be spiritism. So an espiritista, a person that practices Espiritismo, would be a spiritist.
Okay.
Spiritualists were part of the reason why Espiritismo was created by Allan Kardec.
Okay.
So Allan Kardec, his given name, Hippolyte Léon Denisard Revel, was actually a doctor and a professor. And during the 1840s, he started doing experiments with magnetism in regards to animals.
Okay.
And just that whole energy flow. At the same time, spiritualism was becoming a big thing in America, and anything that was big in America ended up making its way to Europe. So spiritualism involving people experiencing like, oh, if you're there, knock 3 times.
Oh, okay.
The table tapping, the wall tapping, the famous Fox sisters of New England, who ended up being proven to have been
to be frauds,
to be fugazi. But he started finding interest in all of these phenomena as they entered Europe, and which is interesting because he was a scientist. So he came at it from a scientific perspective. Of course, it was, I want to see if all of this stuff is real. I want to prove, because I do believe in energy and magnetism and exchange of energy between people, but are they the real deal? So he went to the seances that they had at the time, gyrating tables, lifting tables, you know, anything where you believe in like an old seance, ectoplasm, all of that kind of stuff, is what he originally started to experiment in.
Okay.
And until he ended up finding the real deal. He found mediums. So he met, I believe it was a woman that came down with a spirit, and the spirit was called Truth.
Okay.
And the spirit revealed certain mysteries to him. And then he started meeting other mediums, and the other spirits were coming down telling kind of the same story. So they were corroborating on what we would call an evidencia, something that was told to him from another spirit, and that kind of got him hooked. But coming from the perspective that he came from, he created a whole new name for what he believed, and it was Spiritism, Espiritismo, and it was, again, more scientific, understanding reincarnation, which is a big difference between that and spiritualism. So Espiritismo believes in reincarnation. It believes that people can be mediums. You can develop in mediumship, which is part of Kardecian or Kardecista Espiritismo, but it was a lot more scientific, which is what created Espiritismo Científico, scientific spiritism, which created Mesa Blanca.
Okay.
So when Espiritismo started coming into places like Puerto Rico and Cuba, we're talking, I want to say like the 1860s, 1865, around there. So what was happening was you had all of these well-to-do people from Dominican Republic, from Cuba, from Borinquen, which is what we know now as Puerto Rico, and the well-to-do aristocracy, the bourgeois, as he would call them, where their children were being sent abroad to Europe, where they were finding about this amazing thing called Espiritismo. So what did they do? They brought that back with them. And as things trickled down, it started, popping up in stores and libraries, the pamphlets, the books, because they were all these different journals and newspapers written specifically about Espiritismo. I almost started talking Spanish for a second, excuse me. And what happened was you had people creating different branches.
Okay, so what are some of the branches of
Espiritismo? Espiritismo Científico, the scientific spiritism, which is kind of like the closest to the root. So in that Espiritismo, there's no concept of like commissions and all of that. That doesn't exist. Like you wouldn't have like the Árabes, the Gitanas. That stuff didn't exist. They didn't have groups of spirits as far as like we know commissions. They had elevated spirits, they had non-elevated spirits, different elevations of spirits in the light side, and then in the dark side, obviously, different kinds of malignant spirits, the perturbing spirits, espíritus perturbantes, espíritus obsesores, obsessive spirits, espíritus de atraso, spirits that pull people back. So anytime somebody that has a spirit of atraso, no matter what good you try to do in your life, no matter how far you try to go, something is always going to pull you back and bring you back into darkness or bring you back into loss of something, because that spirit, the darkness of that spirit is meant to try to be your downfall, actually. And what happened interesting, as many things do in the diaspora, so in the Caribbean, what did you have aside from the aristocracy of the French and the Spanish? You had the quote-unquote natives. We're talking about enslaved individuals.
Yes.
We're talking about descendants of Taino, Arawak. We're talking about the people that were either kidnapped from their original homes and placed there and then had offspring, or we're talking about the people that were left originally and started mixing with enslaved people, because, no matter what kind of black you are, black is black. And when you have all these light-skinned people on one side and all the black people on the other side, you can at least be united in one thing.
Yes.
But they all had their own spiritual practices. They all had their spiritual beliefs, which included things like fetishes, included things like idols, included things like graven images, which nowadays in Espiritismo turns into the dolls and the statues and what we call cuadros, which would be like the paintings of different saints or paintings that represent different spirits. So you had people that were practicing their indigenous spiritual customs. And of course, back in the day, we all know as was what gave birth to Lukumi, the necessity for hiding.
Yes.
So you have this thing that isn't centered around the church, because Espiritismo is not, and the Espiritismo and the church do not go together. Which is funny, because there's a lot of Catholic prayers, as we know.
There's a lot of Catholic
prayers. But
prayers.
again, it's more about the intent. And we can get into that, because that's a really interesting part of Espiritismo. And part of it that actually shies people away from it, because a lot of people nowadays are very anti anything Christian, anything Catholic, anything church. But just like with the syncretism, it's less about where it comes from and more about what it represents. So you have these people saying, we need to practice all of these things. If we put a cross and we say Catholic prayers, it looks like we're just having a reunion of Christian people.
We're just having a little fellowship.
We're just having a fellowship. If I look at this statue, Santa Barbara. If I look at this statue and I have, San Pedro, from a Christian perspective, they're not thinking about the deeper spiritual connotation that these people with their indigenous practices brought into it. And that's when things get crossed. So what does that create? Espiritismo Cruzado.
Okay.
So cruzado means crossed. So Espiritismo Cruzado is when you have Espiritismo, the basic concept of Espiritismo, with other imagery and other entities brought into it. So like if you look at something like Sanse, which would be like the Puerto Rican version of 21 Divisions.
Okay.
21 Divisions being the Dominican
version of Vodun.
Point blank, period. And if anybody that wants to argue with me about that, look at a book. Wikipedia doesn't count because people can manipulate that. Anyway, so you have the Sanse, which is a mix of Espiritismo and the 21 Divisions, basically the Lua, with a very heavy emphasis on the saints. Because even in Haitian Voodoo, there's a crossover with the saints being syncretized with the Lua. And for some people that have more of a Catholic background, that's the saint part sticks a little bit for the outside mind. For us, we don't. We see the line, but we just attribute that saint to more than what the Catholics thought it was capable of. So essentially, we're giving jurisdiction to entities and to spirits that they didn't originally have. But you know what? It works. So the proof is in the pudding. All you have to do is eat it. So also with Espiritismo Cruzado, you have Espiritismo Criollo.
Okay.
Which is commonly what we practice. When I say we, I say people from Cuba, people from Puerto Rico. So if you go to a misa in New York City, and there's a table, and the table has either one big fuente meaning fountain, but meaning like a big fish bowl or like a big glass receptacle, or you have a bóveda means tomb or mausoleum, which is why you have the thing in the center, and then either 7 or it would be the 7 or 5 glasses around it, 6 glasses to create 7, and then 8 glasses to create 9. So 8 glasses around, and then a big one in the center, or 6 glasses around and a big one in the center. When you look at that, it's like a mausoleum, because you have the big entryway of the tomb, and then what would be the different spaces for the different dead family members, the different tombs.
Okay.
Within what is the center, where you go in to greet all of these dead people. And in a bóveda of that sense, well, that is a bóveda, what you have the center glass representing what we would call the Santísimo, essentially the Most High, where all things come from.
Yes.
And whether you want to see that as God, whatever God means to you, all of that filters through there. And then you have the different glasses representing different parts of your commission, or different parts of what make up the spirituality. So you have a glass for the familiar spirits, people that, whether they were known or unknown. So you could have, an aunt that passed away, and she exists and she gets light from that glass in the bóveda. But you could also have an ancestor that you didn't know, but that checks in on you. And they, of course, are also part of that, because whether you know them or not, they're related to you.
That's still family.
If a tree falls down in the forest, it does make a sound. The science is real. And then you have, one for the espíritus recogedores. Recoger is to pick up. So these are the spirits that are meant to pick up the negative energy. Because you clean yourself on a bóveda. So they're the ones that are meant to take that and clean it and filter it. Then you have the glass to clarify the astral space. So a glass whose designation is to filter that light, to clean the area around you. So when you're doing prayers at the bóveda, when you're meditating at the bóveda, when you're doing any labor espiritual or spiritual work at the bóveda, that glass is supposed to keep the space clean, so that there can be an abundance of light, an abundance of clarity. You have another glass for the spirits that need light, because there are spirits that exist in our own courts, our own cuadros, that need light. They don't get enough attention. There are spirits that connect to us or live in the space that we live in that also need light, so they can be elevated. So there's a glass for that too. And you have a glass for the comisiones, one glass that filters light to the different commissions. I was thinking about this earlier, of like a good analogy for commissions, and I thought of a union.
Okay.
So you have a whole bunch of people that are unified by a trade, something that they're good at, something that they do. In a union, you have a union head, a union chair.
Yes.
And then you have people underneath that.
Yes.
Sometimes there's more than one. So you can have within your commission one head. You could have 2 heads. It could be a man and a woman of that commission that are the heads. Everybody else works underneath them. And even though they work quote unquote underneath them, they all still serve the same purpose. So going into the commissions in Espiritismo Criollo, to be specific, because in Espiritismo Científico, the scientific one, we already established that wasn't a thing. They don't do commissions. So you have, let's say, the Comisión of the Gitana. I bring that up because, my Gitana is a really, really big deal for me.
Yes, she is.
So
she's beautiful, y'all.
there's her and her my-sized Barbie's doll that's sitting right behind Nikki, watching over like, don't y'all talk no shit.
Exactly. Don't be telling these people all my business.
But so you could have a spirit of a gitana, a gypsy, not to use that in a derogatory way, because it's not the nicest word. It's just what they call the commission. So I have her, and then I may or may not have people that work aside her, underneath her. I think aside is a better way of using it, because there's not like, they're not lesser than, or they're not lower vibrating, as a whole bunch of people like to give all these random unnecessary terms to things. They are just not as prevalent. Like, I have a relationship with her that I don't have with any other spirit that I may have of the same commission. But the spirits of the Gitanos are known for being good with things like money. They're very known for things, for divination. Crystal balls,
card
readings, it's a big deal within that commission. So those are spirits that are going to be good for divination, good for card reading, good with things like money, good for things like travel. But, that doesn't limit them, because they're also spirits of a lot of knowledge and deep spirituality, because they traveled all over the place when they were alive. And, they pick up here and there. So they know a little bit about everything. So you can have a spirit, my Gitana may have certain influences based on where she's from. And there were other people whose gitanas look completely different. So you have like the españolas, the ones that, you know, when people represent them, they look like they're wearing the flamenco outfits.
Okay.
With like the polka dots and the whole ole, vale? And then you have the ones that look like what we would consider more like a gypsy, or more like a Romani. So they have the peasant type skirt, and then the loose blouse, and they'll have wraps, and they'll have shawls, and they'll have lots of bracelets and clingy clangy things and bells. And I've seen people whose gitanas represented with saris.
Oh, okay.
Because they have a more Indian influence. Because again, these spirits traveled all over the place, and just because they're gypsies or gitanas or travelers, that doesn't mean that they're Spanish necessarily. Every land has their own, what they would consider a gypsy. People that are nomads, people that travel from place to place and set up camp. You know, we can attach all of the stereotypical ideals of what we think of when we hear the word gypsy as if we want, but that's a personal people thing. That doesn't take away from their actual capability. It doesn't mean that they're spirits of lower aptitude or spirits of less light. Quite the contrary. I've seen some gitanas and some gitanos and people that are just like, okay, well, damn. That spirit is quite elevated and they know their stuff. So then you have the congos and the congas, which is another big one in Espiritismo, I've heard.
Yeah. We got big. It's a big people party when you start talking about the Congos.
So I've heard. Interesting thing about like you have the Congos, you have the Congas, also you have the Negros, the Negras. So you hear let's pick a name. So let's say like Mama Francisca, or Francisco, El Negro Francisco, or Ta Jose. These spirits originated because there was a person. There was a Mama Francisca. There was a Ta Jose. There was a Maria Leonza. All of these people actually existed. And they were people that had extreme spiritual prowess. We're talking about people that made their mark through their spirituality. So some of them made their mark in palo. Some of them made their mark in terms of what we would consider espiritismo, or some form of espiritismo criollo.
Okay.
Obviously more heavily influenced by whatever their indigenous practice was than anything Catholic. But so what happens is these spirits ended up becoming avatars for a specific kind of spirit. So you can be at a spiritual party and 3 different people can get possessed with Mama Francisca. And it's 3 different, what we would call like caminos. Or paths.
Okay.
They're different avatars. Because each land had its own Mama Francisca. You know, like when people say Viola Davis is the Black Meryl Streep.
Yes. Which
is, you know, a backhanded compliment. But we're talking about somebody that represents an archetype. Somebody that a woman that can play any role. A woman that acting is as easy to her as breathing. And when you watch a role of hers, you don't see her, you see the character. It's the same thing with these spirits. They represent the archetype of everything that the original Mama Francisca represented, just with a little bit of a spin on it. Everything that the original Ta Jose. So they would be like, oh, you know, I'm, you know, Mama Francisca, 7 sayas, 7 skirts, you know, whatever. And they'll have all of these, almost like the palo names, where you have all of these different names added on representing different aspects of nature. And that's a thing. So you have these spirits, and yeah, I know quite a few people that have a Francisca in their cuadro, but they're not the same Francisca. I have a Tomasa in my cuadro. That doesn't mean that Tomasa is the same as somebody else's. It could be a different avatar, because the spirits that we get sent to us are sent to us because of who we are. We don't know that when we're born, and we don't know that when we're kids, but it's not like, oh, because of the influence of that spirit, you became this. No, that spirit they've been with you. They've been with you. And that spirit is with you because of who you were meant to be. Because that spirit shares those traits. So who better to guide you than somebody that lived a life like yours? Or had a way of thinking like yours? I have a Congo. Haha. Obviously.
Who I love dearly.
Let's keep it a buck. Nobody can convince me that he is, you know, completely cool with the fact that I'm gay. Because in those times, I'm sure that there was different feelings about stuff like that.
Yes.
Does that mean that he doesn't have light in my court?
Of course not.
The opposite.
And you weren't here per se.
Oh dear.
But when he did come down, the last time that we had a chat with him, it was a very lively chat. And he said to your husband, he said, hey, I don't know all what y'all doing. You cool with me. I don't know what y'all doing. That's literally what his words of saying, I don't know nothing about your sexuality. They ain't got nothing to do with you and me. To your husband, you cool with me. I don't really understand everything that's going on here. That's none of my business. So it's very interesting to hear people have very strong dogmatic views about sexuality, spirituality, and all these things. When it's obvious that the spirits feel how they feel. Yes, they may not understand your lifestyle, quote unquote. But that doesn't mean that they're going to abandon you or leave you out in the cold or anything like that. It's like that.
He's my ride or die.
Yo, he really is.
Like he has protected me in so many different situations, me not realizing that was going on until after the fact. Because that's the way that he is.
Like, what's the situation that you
okay, this is a really, really good one.
Yeah.
So I used to go to this Baptist church in East Flatbush. I lived for a time until they started talking mess about gay people, and I waited until the end, and then I left, and I said I'd never go back there again. But up until then, I had just really enjoyed the experience. I enjoy learning about different religions, different cultures, because you absorb, and it's nice to see people in their spirituality. Like when you're at a drumming and you're seeing everybody enjoy it, it's just as nice when you're at a church and everybody is really feeling that praise break, or if you're at a Hindu temple and everybody's really into whatever's going on, or if you're at a Catholic church and everybody's really deep in prayer. It's just nice to be around people in full glory of their spirituality. So anyway, I'm on this bus, and I have a habit sometimes of keeping that. This is back when you used to have headphones. I'm old. So I used to keep a headphone slightly off of my ear, because I tend to listen to my music loud, but I had been told that I have to be conscious at all times. So I would keep one of the earphones slightly off of my ear so I could hear things in the background. If people are arguing and you can't hear it and you get
beat up in the process, that's on you.
So I'm sitting there and I hear a group of guys behind me and they're whispering. And not that it was any of my business, and that's not what, like, I wasn't paying attention to them. I was full swing listening to my music, and it was him that kind of like just like touched me, like pushed me a little bit and was like, listen, they're talking about you. And I'm like, who is talking about what? And then I hear the whispering. Then I'm aware that there's a whispering, and they're talking about, the stop is coming. And I'm like, are these dudes trying to rob me? And then jump off the stop, because I was sitting in the seat right in front of the back exit.
Oh, okay.
And they were in the seat that would be, once you walk into the back exit, that it's right against the other window. Mm-hmm. So there's like 4 of them sitting there, and then I'm in the other seat.
Oh. On
the aisle seat, mind you. And I'm like, are these dudes trying to rob me? And I'm like listening, and then he said, don't move. Not this is homeboy talking to me, my dude. And I just like kind of froze, but not in fear.
Like anticipation.
Not even. I literally just froze. Like I implicitly understood that his don't move. All he needed me to do was not move. It wasn't for me to react. It wasn't for me to think about why he said that or what that meant. It was literally for me to just not move. One of the guys out of nowhere goes, stop. And they're like, what you talking about? He was like, not him. And they were like, what? He was like, we get off, we're getting off. And they were like, what are you doing? He's like, we getting off, don't touch him. Not him. And they fleed the bus. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, what was all of that about? And he said, he saw me. So imagine, I would love to be a lot darker than I am, but I am not. I'll be generous to myself and give myself like a nice peach. I tan very well.
You do tan well.
I tan, but then we're going in the winter months, and I'm wearing all white right now, and it's blending in with my skin.
No, stop
I'm not that light. That my husband is, but I'm not. But so for somebody of my complexion to all of a sudden turn a completely different complexion, opposite spectrum, and obviously a different visage, and for somebody to see that,
that means that he wanted them to see
that means that he was like, don't move, because he needed to use whatever energy in my body to be able to pull that stunt and manifest so that the kid could see me or see him, to pretty much be like, I dare you. And they didn't. And I just remember getting home and like going in his area and being like, there, you are something else. And some people are weird because it's weird when people need the bad thing to happen. But like, if the bad thing happened, where's the proof? Like, the proof isn't until it happens. No, if the spirit tells you something to avoid something, the proof is that it doesn't happen.
Hey,
if it happens, the spirit wasn't wrong. You didn't listen. They told you to do something or not do something or find something or put in a service or put an offering or do a prayer or something, and you didn't do it. And the thing happened anyway. Because they're only telling us things because that's the path that we're on. They're not making anything happen. Your behavior is putting you in the position, in a path that X, Y, and Z is going to happen. If they choose to be like, listen, this is going to happen. This is what you got to do. You either do it or you don't. That's a personal choice. That's on you. And the Muerto's very good that way. If the Muerto says, you give me this so we can take care of it, and you don't do it, there's the bargain. And one would say, oh, that's irresponsible. No, it's not. No, it's not. So we have a whole life. And some person that lived their whole life and doesn't even get to rest because their mission is to help take care of us is supposed to live our life for us. I don't see that. And these people have let me stumble many times and laughed about it. I owed homegirl a party. A whole party. And she was like, I ain't give you, and I didn't do the party. And I didn't do the party. And it would come up. People that didn't even know me, your gitanas that not that you have to, you owe her a party. So I finally did the party. And let me tell you something, because I felt so bad. There was roses everywhere. I turned the whole entire living room into an altar. It was like her complete space. Even though the living room is her space, period, because that's the relationship that we have. And I didn't enjoy the party at all. I don't remember a goddamn thing about the party. I wasn't there for very long at all. And even afterwards, it's worse when it's one thing to get a message from somebody else when they're possessed. It's another thing for you to be out of consciousness, come back and be like, there's a message from you left by you, meaning your body. And she was like, don't think that, she said, they told me that she said, don't think that because you did this that we're even. Oh. You made me wait. I lived. I enjoyed myself. But now you're going to wait like I had to wait. So that you can learn, don't make me ask for something twice. That was the last time I ever asked for something. She had to ask me for something twice. Last year, my godfather, we were getting ready for my 8th birthday. And he said, oh, remember how you did that thing for your gitana? I was like, yeah. He was like, she wants one before your 8th birthday. This was in July. My August birthday, my 8th birthday is in August. With his in between.
You and Kika have the same 8th birthday.
Yeah, I was like, August 29th. I was like, that's my sister. We had the same birthday. Oh, yeah. All of that good stuff. Happy belated birthday, Eko Odun. But yeah, I was like, oh, it's the end of July. I need to have a party before 3 weeks. What days do you have available? What days are we not doing anything? I took the first available date, and that's all she wrote. That is all she wrote, and I had the party. Because I was not going to make her wait the second time. You live and you learn, hopefully. There's no, and that's the beautiful thing about Espiritismo. We tend to say that there's no rules, quote unquote. There's tradition, there certainly is structure.
Yes.
And there is hierarchy in the spirits. Not so much in the people. You should respect somebody that is a very, very well developed medium, but you're extending that respect to them on behalf of the spirits that they have.
Yes.
The same way that you respect somebody in Lukumi and Ocha, maybe not just by their age, but by the Olorisha that they have crowned, and the fact that they have an Olorisha on their head. That's where their respect extends to. The real hierarchy is in the spirits. So you listen to them or you don't. It's a personal choice. There's no rule that says that you have to. It would behoove you to. It would be smart. It would be prudent. But nobody's going to force you to do that. And I think that's what makes it hard for people that are just getting into it, especially when they don't necessarily have somebody that can be there steadily guiding them.
Yeah.
That they don't understand that. They don't understand that the spirits are there, period. Point blank, period. You have to look for Ocha. Ocha has to be done to you. The spirits are yours. Nobody gives them to you. There's no madrina or padrino at the mesa. We extend that as people, having respect. The same way that if there's an 80-year-old woman sitting at the table and I'm at a mesa, I'm going to give her respect because of her age, point blank, period. Or even if she's sitting anywhere in the circle, I'm going to respect her for her age, point blank, period. Because I don't know what she knows that she doesn't know, but she's old enough to be my grandmother. It would behoove you to respect her.
And I don't know. I feel like that kind of goes when you have that type of thought process with people, then it's not that hard to apply it to the spirits, because it's like that same kind of respect that you would extend to your elderly grandmother, to your aunt that knows her stuff, to your mother. You know, like, you're not going to disrespect these spirits. Like you said, they live their life already. They coming back because they want to come back. Don't waste their time.
There's a word for that.
What's that?
Home training.
Oh, as the West Indians would call it, broad tupsy.
It's the guys,
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, would you walk in somebody's house and don't greet them? Would you if you said you was coming over, would you at least not ask them, do they want something from the store? If they said, can you bring me some tea, and I'm sick, and you bring the tea, that means something. If you don't bring the tea, that means something too. You know, so it's like okay, so like sometimes, and I always wonder about this, like on my boba, I'll change the water, right? I'll have my day and I'll refresh the water. It'd be like 2-3 days, the water start looking crazy. Do you immediately refresh the water? Do you let the water sit for a while? Do you refresh it on the day that you usually refresh it? Is it like a personal feeling? Because sometimes if I'm not feeling well and I look and see the water is looking crazy, I'm like, oh, this is kind of connected. Maybe I should freshen this water, and then I'll feel a little bit peppier about anything that's going on, you know. But I think sometimes it can get a little hard for me at least, to be like, am I just the custodian here?
Hello.
Am I just the help here? Because I feel like the help. I don't know if I'm doing enough, you know. It's like, and wanting to feel, I guess I want to constantly keep that level of respect there, because at the end of the day, it's like, I'm a baby, you know. You folks are coming back to give me light and guidance and wisdom, and I don't know why you chose to come back to me. I'm still discovering things about myself, but I want to respect you enough to make sure that you have a clean place to come and do your work, and that you have a safe place, and that I'm respecting the rules that are being laid. Like, if I'm not allowed to have a bunch of people in my house, I'm not gonna be having a party every weekend and upset the house, you know. Like, I don't want to do that.
You're not gonna have people carrying on in front of your boy, though.
No. You know, no. Like, so I think that it is a lifestyle when you get to a place of understanding that it's not just a party trick. I'm not just, I have these spirits and I have all of this stuff and I bought all these candles and these dolls and stuff. It's like, are you living your life in a way that is conducive to what your court is asking of you? You know, and are you putting your court in situations where they have to come and keep rescuing your ass? Because people get tired. That's in real life too. If you are the friend that keeps calling people with your problems and you don't want to change it, after a while people stop answering the phone for you. I don't feel that.
Why are you back with him?
Well, girl, I'm tired of going over there and smashing up this man's car. Leave him alone.
Weren't you about to quit that job like 17 times in the past year? Why are you still there? Choices, decisions. In regards to the glass thing, if I invited you to my house today and you went into my kitchen and my kitchen was dirty, would you want to be here?
I definitely ain't eating nothing.
You're definitely not eating anything, right?
No.
What does the boba that represent? What is even just the fountain? Because like I said, in Puerto Rican Espiritismo, there's just the fuente. In Cuban Espiritismo, there's the bóveda.
Okay.
But either way, we're talking about glasses of water. Glasses of water are supposed to represent clarity. They're supposed to represent peace. They're supposed to represent cleanliness. Spiritual hygiene. If the water is dirty, or if the glass is going... For those of y'all, I'm going to get a little bit closer. If the glass goes... Like the old cartoons when somebody's, ran and then their throat is dry. What do you think they're going to do with that? What can they do with that? You got to try to keep things as clean as possible. Like, I have the issue in this apartment, it retains a lot of heat. So in the summer, I got to keep the window open because if not, the bowl of the glasses are going to get murky. Let's not also be fanatics about it. If your glasses get murky, they're doing witchcraft to me. Oh my God. And then every day I stub my toe. That's the witchcraft, you see? I knew it. Then I had a dream. That's all psychosomatic, boo. Your glass is just dirty. Now, if you have central air and your glasses consistently stay clean up until the 6th day, and this one time in a controlled environment, you put your glasses and they get murky 2-3 days in, then I might be like, gotta clean the house. That would be my first reaction. Okay. I'm not gonna think, brujeria! It's, you gotta clean the house. Because, especially us as spiritual people, we forget, and especially spiritual people, especially living in a major city, we come in contact with, under normal circumstances, not during Rona. Right now, I don't see, nobody. But under normal circumstances, we come in contact with far too many people in far too many spaces. I don't know that I wasn't standing on a platform in the section where somebody decided to kill themselves. I don't know if the time that I was waiting for the light to change, I was standing on a corner that notoriously has people murdered in that corner. These spaces don't get clean. I don't know if I was by somebody that's got some deep spiritual turmoil going on, and my spirits were like, oh, you know what, we could take a little bit of that for you. We're going to be nice. He'll be fine. He knows what to do. And then I get home and I'm like, and I got to go and clean my entire space in a bath because of something that I brought home. Because we're sponges. And everybody wants to be a healer so bad, but they don't worry about their own health. If you're not healthy, what business do you have trying to help make other people be healthy? You understand? So, going back to the glasses, it's just spiritual hygiene. Don't be a fanatic about it. Don't always think that it's the end of the world and it's witchcraft. But do try to keep them clean. Because especially starting out. Because number one, you're building a habit. It's something you've never done before. It's a responsibility. And once you build it into a habit, it becomes ingrained in you. And yeah, sometimes if you do it for 3 years straight, that you're doing it every single week. And then life gets complicated. You get a new job, things are going well, things are happening. Once every 2 weeks. It's not the end of the world. We should try to stay on top of these things as much as possible. But there's always exceptions. And there's always times that it's like, okay. But if you're going to leave your stuff dry for a whole month, and then go to a misa and complain that nobody said anything to you, or I didn't see anything. Your people don't, I wouldn't want to talk if I was thirsty. I can't speak, I'm thirsty. You know? You're not giving them anything to work off of.
They need something. They need
water
something to work with.
Water is the universal spiritual conduit. There's almost no religion in the world that doesn't revere water in some space, in some way, shape, or form during ritual. Water is magic. So you want it to be clean water. In the grand scheme of things, the water that we're drinking is not new. It's hundreds of millions of years old. It just keeps on getting recycled in the atmosphere. That's how magic water is. It'll evaporate. It's here 1 minute, and then it's snow the next minute, and then it's ice, and 1 minute it's dirty, and then it gets filtered through the earth again, and it's clean, and we still drinking it. It's been here longer than us. It'll be here after us. You want it to be fresh. You want it to be clean. Because that's going to keep you fresh and you clean and your space. If your boveda is coughing for 3 weeks and then you come home and you want to clean yourself on the boveda, where that energy is not, that muck, it has nothing. The filter is clogged. It's just like an air conditioner. If the filter is clogged, that's how people get sick. When you sleeping and you breathing in dirty filtered air. Because you're breathing all of that in. It's the same thing. The filter is clogged. It can't be taken out to the other side of the filter to be rerouted in the way that you need for your petition and sent back through the filter of the boveda in the good way that you want it, if it can never make it through to the other side. So if that water is not clear, where is that petition going?
No,
where is that cry for help going? Specifically when I'm saying when we're working with the boveda. So it is important, especially when you're first starting, to keep either your boveda glasses or your fuente as clean as often as possible.
What are some good prayers for people that are just starting out?
Some good prayers. So, we had mentioned that earlier, right? And I'm a person, I'm not big on the church. The Catholic Church. For enough reasons to merit its own podcast. We don't need to get into it. I'm sure that you guys can all read between the lines. But one thing that I've always attributed them to, because funny thing, quick sidebar, before I personally got involved in Espiritismo, understanding that I was a medium in that way, I practiced elemental magic first.
Okay.
So I used to get really into meditation, like getting really into deep meditative states, and I never understood it was because I was a medium. So it was innate in me, which ended up helping when I started working with the spirits. The only problem is the door was a little too open too quick without the proper training for me to be able to handle what was trying to come through me. And that created a mess. Nothing is perfect. And I'm not sitting here like, oh, I've been practicing Espiritismo for this years and I'm perfect. No, it used to be messy. It did not used to be pretty. But one thing I always had to rely on was going back to prayer. So I always saw it as like a chant. My grandmother gave me two of the best pieces of advice as involving prayers in the books. One thing she said to me, she said, John Michael, what's your favorite prayer I was holding the Kardec book, the Oraciones Escogidas. In English, they have it as the collection of selected prayers. It's either orange with the Jesus with the thorns, or it's yellow with the Jesus and the thorns if it's in English. Just be careful, the English translations in the English book, some of them are just bad. So just either look for another copy or another printout or another option of that prayer translated into Spanish, or ask somebody that's Spanish to translate it for you, because if you look at them, it's like they're grammatically, that like even in English you're like, that sentence made absolutely no sense.
Oh gosh.
But she said to me, so what's your favorite prayer? I said a los ángeles guardianes y espíritus protectores, which is to the guardian angels and the protecting spirits. And she began to recite the prayer, cool, calm, and collective, from start to finish. And she said, do you pray at the Bova del Lar? I said, yes. And she said, how much easier would it be if you didn't have to worry about having a book in your hand in the way? I said, it would be much easier. She said, if you have prayers that you do all the time, try to memorize them. She said, number one, you shouldn't be, this was the second piece of advice, you shouldn't be reading anything that you don't understand what you're saying. Because if you're reading a prayer and you don't agree with everything in that prayer, every time you say it, you're a hypocrite. This is my grandmother.
All right, grandma. So
like there's a prayer in here that, Lord, I forgive with all my heart my enemies. The first time I read that, I was like, I'm a Taurus. I ain't forgiving a goddamn thing. You know what I'm saying? And I said, I can't read that because it makes me a hypocrite. So I never read that prayer. Because I can't say that incantation because I don't believe in it. How am I going to try to use something for spiritual and magical purposes if I don't believe in it? And then for other things, just understanding what they mean. Looking past the veil of Catholicism.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode, The Good Spirits. Please stay tuned for next week's episode, where we continue the conversation with John Michael and go deeper into the good spirits. As always, you can find me online at Soul Things Botanica. You can find me on Instagram at Soul Things BK. You can find me on Facebook at Soul Things Botanica. You can also find the podcast now on Instagram, the How to Be Magical Podcast, as well as our Facebook page, the How to Be Magical Podcast. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And as always, this is Nikki Buchanan, and I am wishing you a week of love, joy, peace, prosperity, and no foolishness. Okay, stay safe, y'all. Bye.